Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to episode number 43 of Coffee with Campus Consultancy. Very soon, I'm going to introduce you to an amazing guest today, Gabi or Gabrielle Murphy, who's doing all sorts of cool stuff, which I'm going to let her tell you all about. But today, thank you for joining us. If you're with us this Thursday morning, June the 11th. Wow, June's nearly halfway over already. If you're with us, thank you. It's awesome to have you here. If this is 30 minutes of personal development in the morning, or if this is just 30 minutes of you having your morning coffee and listening to an interesting topic, thank you one way or another for joining. Today, we are going to be talking about how you can make a positive impact or make positive change while still a student. So if you're a student and you're listening today and you think, yes, I want to do something that has meaning, something that I'm passionate about, this is the episode for you. And if you're a staff member and you're tuning in, this might be some tips or insights from a student herself on how you can bring this to life for your students. So with that, I'll play a quick introduction and let's get into the episode. Gabi, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great, thanks.
That is good to hear. Gabi, thanks for joining me and everyone today. I'd like to throw it over to you maybe to start with because you're doing so much. Can you tell us a little bit about what's on your plate right now? What are you getting up to and what keeps you busy throughout the week and throughout the year?
So I am a second year student at the University of Sydney. I'm studying a Bachelor of Arts majoring in linguistics and anthropology. I'm also a business student at TAFE because I like to kind of round it out a little bit.
Oh my goodness.
I'm co-vice president of the Network of Women's Society within the business school at the University of Sydney. And I'm also the New South Wales director of the Girls Leadership Network. So I'm managing the interstate expansion of that program. I do a couple of other little bits and pieces, which I'm sure will come up as well while we chat.
Yes. And how do you balance all of those things? Time management has been a big thing that's coming up with so much on your plate. How do you do that and still sleep at night and get your assignments in on time?
Google Calendar is like a lifesaver.
Yes.
If I didn't color code everything, I don't think I'd be able to do it. And time blocking as well. So I'd rather dedicate like 4 hours or a day to doing all of my uni work at once rather than having like 2 hours every night. So then you get the most value out of the time that you're using.
Yes.
Time.
And in terms of today's topic on making an impact, I mean, you're at TAFE and you're studying, you're working a couple of part-time jobs as well, I understand. Where does the desire for that come from, I guess, would be a nice starting point. Like, why do you feel like going above and beyond that, doing all these things for women within the University of Sydney, for within the state, or even in your community? Where do you think that comes from? Have you always been interested in that, always done extracurriculars, or is this a more recent thing?
I think it's always been something I've kind of done. I was always very independent and driven as a child. I've got some funny stories from when I was little about me just kind of going off and doing what I wanted.
I definitely want to hear one of them if you're comfortable sharing it. What did you get up to?
I was in kindergarten and I missed my bus to go home from school. And they had this waiting station for your parents called Walkers. And I thought, being new to the school, like a couple of months in, that Walkers was where you went when you walked home. So I missed my bus and started walking home. And we lived in this little town of like 10,000 people, but it was a solid walk. And I remember my mum freaked out because I went missing and no one could find me because I was just so like, oh, I've got a problem. I know how to fix it. I'll just get myself home or walk home. And I just did it. And I didn't ask anyone. And I had all these people all around town looking for me because...
Oh, no. Where's Gabi? She's gone.
But yeah, definitely from like when I was young, I've always been very driven and see a problem, go to fix it kind of thing, even with myself. So if I see something with myself, like, oh, I'm not earning enough money, or I want to do this, or I want to learn that, I just go and kind of do it and end up loading up my plate with things to do.
Yeah, and that balance thing, maybe we'll dig into that a little bit more later. Interested in that, someone who's quite self-directed, whether you see the walking sign, you're like, great, well, I'll start walking from here, I'll find my way home. It obviously sounds like there's a degree of independence and that kind of entrepreneurial spirit there. Where did you first start or maybe with the work you're doing now, why help others in the way that you're helping others? Obviously, there's lots of challenges out there, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and whatnot, very much within gender equality, Target 5, and subset Target 5.5 is about equal representation of women in leadership. So like a direct UN goal. Why is that something that you're putting so much time and effort and energy into, when some will put the time and effort into other things, and this seems to be the thing that you've really locked in on and doubled down on? So why is that important to you?
I think it stems from kind of not having that guidance when I was younger. I know obviously growing up in a smaller town, there aren't as many resources. We weren't that far away from, we're only an hour, 2 hours south of Sydney, so not that bad. But definitely not having all those opportunities around me and not having access to them and having to travel really far for high school. I want to be able to bring those opportunities to people that might not necessarily get access to them like I did.
Yes. And for when you mentioned being at high school, thinking about that age bracket, the idea of not being able to be what you can't see, where do you land on that? Were there female leaders in the community that you looked up to? Were there people in books or in history, on TV, musicians, artists? Was there anyone that you were looking at and going, oh wow, that's such a good example of leadership? Or was there a bit of a gap there in what you saw?
I went to a private girls' school, so they're quite in the closest regional city. So I went to a high school in Wollongong, and there were a lot of really great female leaders in the years above me. But because it took me so long to get home from school, like I would get home at 5:30, 6 o'clock, depending on how I was doing that. I didn't get the opportunity to join the clubs because I would get home too late if I stayed back for orchestra, or if I stayed back for debating, or I couldn't get to this place and that place because my parents couldn't take me. So I think seeing those people around me, and obviously not having as many opportunities, but still having a decent amount in a relatively big city, that was kind of what drove me into it, because I could see those people and I wanted to be those people, but couldn't be.
Yes.
Or I couldn't at that point in time.
Sure. And you mentioned on the idea of not on how to make a positive impact as a student. One part of that is as a student, and often, not always, but often in the age brackets that we're sort of working with, students can be quite young. So when you started to get so involved in leadership positions and also teaching and speaking about leadership, how did you get past that idea of, did you experience any of that imposter syndrome or any of those feelings of, I don't know if I'm ready for this, when's the right time? How did you work through all of that?
I definitely have feelings of imposter syndrome. Even coming on today, there was a part of me that was like, will I have anything of value to add? And we've been talking for 10 minutes, so there's obviously something I have to say. But there's definitely that feeling, especially being, I think, female as well. I'm kind of both of those things that can tend to make people feel like they might not bring as much value. And it's kind of pushing past it, and you've got to really tell yourself your worth. And I think that kind of drivenness that I must by nature have has really helped. And I've reached out for lots of opportunities that some people have told me I probably shouldn't go for. And I think that's really, once you get started, it's hard to stop. You just got to really break through.
I agree. And that idea of, I can't be a leader for this reason, or I can't do this because I'm male or female or too old or too young or too experienced or not experienced. One thing that's helped me with that is those aren't our thoughts. That's another thought that's got into our head, and we've just let it stay there for one reason or another. And so it's if we were to think back 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, there definitely would have been people in similar roles doing different sorts of things, helping the community go, who am I? I'm only 15. Who am I to lead the hunt? Who am I to start taking care of this household? And so those ideas have been around for a really long time. And Carl Jung has this concept that you don't have an idea has you. And that's always really resonated with me. And I go, oh, okay, if that idea has me, is it serving me? And if the idea isn't serving me, if it's limiting me, then I'm I got to get that out. However, whatever I have to do, And so for you, when you do get started, I'd love to hear about that first role that you took. So when you come to university and you're doing TAFE and you decide to step up into one of these leadership roles, not letting your age define you or your experience define you, but letting your drive define you. What did that process look like? Did you send a cold email? Did you see someone at a stall? Did you meet somebody?
So with the Girls Leadership Network, I was a student participant. In the first year, it did the program in Canberra. I was there for year 11 and 12. So I did that for 2 years, and I really liked it. It wasn't something I really wanted to do at the start. My dad really pushed me into it. I was more like, I want to do paid work. I don't want to go to something that doesn't pay me when I could be spending my nights waitressing. But he really pushed me to do it, and I ended up really loving it. And at the end of it, I knew I wasn't going to stay in Canberra. I was going to move to either Sydney, Melbourne, or Wollongong. Hadn't really decided, but there was no Girls Leadership Network in any of those places. So I went up to the founder and I told her, like, I'd really love to still be involved. Would there be opportunities for me to still be involved if I moved away? And she was like, yes, I've always wanted to expand. And so a year later, in January this year, we finally got around to it. So that's kind of how that came along. It was just, I expressed my interest. And that's how I've gotten a lot of things. Like, you just send an email, or I've had girls email me and they've said, I've really loved the workshop. How can I get more involved? And it just kind of snowballs from there.
Yes. I love that idea of being around, we were talking this a little bit about on the show yesterday, being around people who are passionate and inspired and doing things they love. And then I think you've added a really valuable layer to that, which is express your interest. Like, express to them verbally or written that you are interested in what they do and why they do it. And I think that can go all the way through, you know, if you're watching this today and you're going through your day, look for things you're interested in and then find who's doing it and tell them. So if that's a TV program, Google it, find the director, send them an email. If it's, you read an article in the newspaper or magazine, find that author or that journalist. Often their contact details are down the bottom. Send them a piece of appreciation. If it's on LinkedIn or social media, DM them, send them a connection request and say, hey, I saw this post. It's amazing. I believe in it. What you're doing is incredible. And I think Gabi's mentioned going one step further and saying, hey, I'd love to be involved. What could I do? And then coincidentally, you know, or maybe not, she said, yeah, you know, wow, I've always wanted to do this. And now you're the one coming and helping me. So there can be a real win-win there. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. It works for jobs as well. Like, I have a friend who is really into financial services, and she was 19 and she reached out to someone at quite a big company and said, like, I love finance. And she ended up getting a part-time job while at uni in a massive finance company. So it works for volunteering, it works for jobs, it works for everything, because it's really humbling to hear that what you're doing brings value to other people. And I haven't been doing it for too long, but I've gotten some emails from girls, and it's like, I'll make sure to send them links before I open applications for other things, or let them know of other things I hear about. Or I've got one girl that I'd love to bring on as a facilitator for workshops next year when she goes to university. And I'll make sure to remember her name, because, like, she's so interested, and she's interested in something that I'm doing. And that makes me really happy.
Yes, I love that. That's amazing. So people jumping on and saying, hello, Jess, good morning. Brandy, good morning. Hello to both of you. So you start getting involved, you take on this leadership role. In terms of going out and actually making an impact in the community and working with, whether that's one person or large groups of people, when did you start to feel like the work you were doing in the voluntary space was having an impact? Like, I grew up in the country as well. And when you said, like, I could volunteer, but I could also waitress and make money, it's such a country mindset. Like, it's so pragmatic, isn't it? They're like, but you could be working and making money. You're like, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So how did you, or when did you feel like what you were doing, you're like, no, this is really, like, this is making a difference, and I know it is?
I felt that about a lot of things. Like, I actually do love my waitressing jobs. I love when customers have a smile on their face and they have a good time because of what I'm doing. So it kind of goes into that as well. But definitely when I was starting off with my volunteering, and we had a program at my high school for homework assistance for children with refugee backgrounds in the community. And I remember we had so much fun and they seemed to enjoy it so much. And there was such a tangible result from that hour and a half I was doing once a week, because they were also getting their homework done. But it was such a happy and like fun moment. And I think that really kind of showed me that even the smallest thing can really make a difference, and helped me understand that, especially going forward. I've always like kind of held that with me, that it doesn't have to be a big difference.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think there's little, we call them little, but I mean, they're real. I think the impact is, sometimes we try to quantify it. Is it little or big? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's real. You're making a real impact on somebody, which is powerful. And interested to dig into your work with Now as well. Vice President of a student society is something I'm really, really passionate about. We do a lot of work in that area. Please tell me, if you would, a little bit, what's Now all about, and why did you decide to take on Vice President role there?
I didn't really decide to take on Vice President. It kind of fell in my lap.
Okay.
I was new to Sydney, and I had heard like, sign up to all these societies. It'll be really good for you. You'll meet people. And I'd also heard advice that, apply for everything, because the application process in itself is a learning experience. And then when you really want an opportunity, you'll have gone through an interview, you'll have done it. So I signed up. First year, didn't know anyone, didn't think I got signed up for subcommittee for president's assistant. Never thought I would get it. Just kind of did it because I wanted to. And I went to the interview, and I had a passion for it, because I'd already been doing similar work with the Girls Leadership Network. Now is all about linking sponsor companies and female students and helping them have career opportunities and personal development, and kind of finding their way through university and into graduate roles. And so I kind of had that linkage, and I went into the interview, and I remember the president from last year said that she just really liked my attitude and how I had all these ideas and I had all of this passion for it. So I ended up getting the role, and from president's assistant, there isn't a very clear jump except for onto like vice president or president. And I never would have thought that I would get it. And she came up to me and she said, I really want you to run. So I did, and I got it. So that kind of just, it wasn't a plan, but I definitely am really enjoying the role and my work with the society. I
love it. Saying said, such a great idea. Yes, even the application process can be a learning point. I love it. Very, very cool. Gab, tell me a little bit about being the president's assistant. Like, what did you learn being around someone in a leadership role for the 9 months?
It was kind of it's president's assistant, but we were very much assistants for whatever kind of needed to happen. And I think it really taught me that being able, just because you have one role with supporting one person or two people, in the instance of Now, there's two presidents.
Oh, you might have cut out on me there. Oh, sorry, go again. You've come back.
If they need help in another area, even if you're supposed to be with one person, go help in that other area. You don't have to kind of be dedicated to one person or one team, and you'll learn so much more, and it shows so much more dedication. And that's the main takeaway that I had from it. And to be confident as well. Like, I saw these girls, my biggest fear in life is public speaking, which is hard because I facilitate workshops. But to see these girls getting up and speaking and talking to people and seeing what I wanted to do was really inspiring. So definitely working under someone that emulated what I wanted to hopefully become in the future was really great.
I love that. Working under someone who emulates what you want to become in the future. This is taking all the romance out of the show as people hear me like slowly type the tip and then boom, the tip's up on the screen. I don't even know if I spelled emulate correctly, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I nailed it. Thanks. Yeah, you study linguistics?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. It would have been so embarrassing. Thank you. I think that's a really, really interesting point, and it's really practical. Of when you say from the point before of reach out and express your interest, to then if you get the chance to work with someone or around someone or next to someone who there's something about them that you would like to be about you, then if you're around good stuff rubs off. And I think that the opposite of that's true for sure. If you're around habits that aren't so good or values that you aren't so aligned with, that can kind of rub off as well. And I've been in that situation as a leader where I've not expressed the best values or the best habits, and I've seen that rub off on other people. I'm like, oh, I'm really doing them a disservice. And now hopefully we've corrected that. But I think that's a really, really interesting point. And so now when you're in this vice president's role, if someone, say a president's assistant or some of the other exec team, if they were to hang around you, how do you think they would describe your leadership style or how you go about your approach to the work you do with now? What do you think people
I think I'm quite careful. I think studying, language and culture and having worked with a lot of like vulnerable groups, like children and people with refugee backgrounds and those sorts of groups, you have to be careful. And I've done a lot of work with the homeless community as well. You've got to be careful about what you say and how you say it, and you can't say anything out of line. And so I think when I'm in a leadership position, I'm very thoughtful about how I'm communicating, what I'm saying, how it's coming off. And so I can be very slow to communicate because I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. And I like to think that people appreciate that I'm very much quality over quantity in that sense, in my leadership style. I'd rather have a really good, well thought out process of communication or delegation than just kind of quickly getting things done and being like, you do this and you do this without thinking about how that person works or what they're best at or who they might work the best with if it's like partner work, that kind of thing.
I love that. You mentioned some very specific causes there, whether it's working in a homeless community, people who are recently arrived, immigrants or refugees. How did you determine that those were different groups or people within the community that you were interested in working with? How did you know that? Did you know that that was work you would be interested in, or did you say, hey, I'm just going to try this out and see what it's like, see if I can help? What's that process like for you?
The process with working with people with refugee backgrounds was very much, I think, linked in with education and personal development because it was tutoring and homework assist programs that I was doing with them. That's where I think I really found my passion. But I also do have a passion for helping the homeless community based off of personal life experiences and people I've known. And that really, I think it gives you a different insight onto that community when you have another separate insight into it. And I want to be able to bring that kind of understanding to that sphere.
I love the idea of how do you balance bringing a sense of understanding and empathy with the idea of being really passionate about what you do? How do you think those two things fit together? Because on the surface, you could say, and understanding seems slow and question asking and very thought out. And sometimes passionate can seem, like the paint splatter in the background, quite like loud and energetic and quick and fast. How do you think those two things fit together?
I don't think passion necessarily has to be this like burst of energy. Passion it can be really underlying in everything you do, and you can have like a soft passion that shines through. It's like the clouds are your task and it's the sun behind it. I don't know, something like that. It kind of gets spread out across everything. And it doesn't have to be like this one ray of sunshine going through the cloud. It can kind of come through everything. And it doesn't have to be that little burst. It can nice and spread out.
And what does that practically look like in your work? I mean, it's a beautiful metaphor. What does that look like when you enter a space, when you're working with people? How do you, I love that idea of a soft passion. How does that spread out without being overwhelming and like burst of energy?
I think with a passion in helping people, it's, which I think fundamentally doing philanthropy work and social justice work, it is a passion for helping people overall. It's really easy for that to come out softly because you're just being kind and you're bringing that passion to make someone's day better through in small interactions. I think it might be a little bit harder if, say, you have a passion for equities, like my friend. It's a bit hard to softly integrate a passion for finance into everyday situations. But when you have something that's a little bit more broad and a little bit more value-based, it's very easy to bring that value into every aspect of your life.
I like that. That's a nice metaphor. I like that idea of the sun breaking through the clouds in a lot of different ways. That's great. Gabi, if you were to go back and you were to visit, year 11, 12, you at the conference in Canberra, learning about leadership, being a few years further on down the track now, but still very much in the thick of it, still a student, still doing very much, still learning as we all are. Is there anything that you would pass on to, Gabi, age 16, 17, that maybe someone said to you and you'd like to go, yeah, that's really important, you should really listen, or something that you've learned over the last couple of years that you're like, I wish I'd or it would have been great to learn that even a little bit sooner?
I think don't let your age define you is the one thing that I would say. I had this opportunity to do work with a political party once, and my dad actually told me, and he was very, he pushed me to do a lot of things, but he was kind of like, I think you're too young. And I was 17 maybe, I just turned 18. And it was a bit disheartening to hear because it was something I really wanted to do. And so I emailed the organizer of the group and I said, look, I'm 18, can I come? And she was like, yeah, of course. And I showed up and I ended up being the delegate to the national team for a couple of months. And it was a really great experience. And if I had listened to my dad, definitely listen to your parents because they have some great insight, and I wouldn't be doing the work I do with the Girls Leadership Network if I hadn't been pushed to do it by him. But if I hadn't chosen not to listen to him on that point, I probably wouldn't have done some of the things I've done.
That's really interesting. I like that. And so I think if people are listening in today and you're thinking about, well, how do I bring this to life in my life? Think about something that you want and don't worry about why you want it just for a wee second. We talk a lot about why you do what you do, but if you see something today, whether it's an article, something on the news, something you read, something you listen to, something you watch, if that's something that you want to get involved with, as Gabi sort of said, express your interest, reach out, see if you can help, and start creating some reasons why you can do it rather than list off all the reasons why you can't do it. Because if you dig down and you dig deep, you can find reasons why. You can think of times in your life when you've gone after something before that you didn't know how to do, but you figured it out. And if you can think of enough of those, it will encourage you to go for those things that you want, as Gabi's reflected on, especially if it's aligned with your values, then that'll seep out into everything too. Gabi, I know you've got a lot on your plate. You're doing an immense amount of stuff. How are you balancing TAFE, uni, a couple of jobs, several volunteering roles, and anything else you're doing that I don't even know about yet? I know you've got a lot on your plate, so I want to be really respectful of your time. Thank you for coming on today. And one last question before you do leave. If we were to flash forward to, a year from now, if it's the middle of June next year, if we were to have this conversation in a year from now, what are some things, or what's something that's on your mind, whether it's, something like, I'm just really looking forward to having a holiday somewhere, or you want to take a course, or you want to grow one of the organizations that you're working with, or, win best team for Business One again in second semester. What's something that's sort of on your list for the next 6 months or year?
I definitely want to grow the Girls Leadership Network. Yeah. I'd love to bring it to my home city, not have to commute to Sydney for it. Would be great. Yes. And bring it to more girls and help make more of a difference through that.
Awesome. I love it. Well, we'll end the live stream here. We'll jump off and we'll chat about exactly that, some more strategic stuff. Thank you for coming on today, Gabi. You're amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And thank you for everyone tuning in and listening in today. This has been episode number 43. If you're interested in checking out Gabi, Gabrielle Murphy on LinkedIn, popping up just as her name is there, follow along, connect with Gabrielle if that's appropriate, if there's a way that you can help or contribute or something you're curious about. But mainly from us, thank you for tuning in today. And we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll speak with you soon. Bye.